On Saturday afternoon, on March 22nd, 2014, in Celo, North Carolina, we got together to celebrate Zeitgeist Day by sharing some videos and the following presentation. Well, welcome to ZDay 2014 Celo, the zombie apocalypse. That's what ZDay is all about, right? That's where we're headed at this point in time. Just think about Black Fridays. Black Friday is a zombie apocalypse of the cultural conditioning that we have right now. That's what we have showing up. I woke up this morning thinking about that and thinking about how ZDay, Zeitgeist Day, and zombies have a lot in common in terms of the kinds of things that we're talking about. We're talking about a culture that is essentially composed of cultural zombies at this point in time. So I'm going to give a little presentation today about a book that was just recently released by the global Zeitgeist team, lecture team, called The Zeitgeist Movement Defined, Realizing a New Train of Thought. It was released in January. And this book is now available for free downloads online. You can also get copies through Amazon.com for a digital copy for your Kindle. You can order copies that are actually printed on demand at a reasonable cost. The cost of the books is just the cost that Amazon charges. The books have been made available on an open license. They're free to download. I have copies available here that I have made available to anybody that's interested in taking those. And you're welcome to take one for yourself, and if you have somebody that you'd like to share it with, take some for them too. So today's talk is going to be largely drawn from the ideas and essays that are in this book. On the front cover of the book is this: the tremendous and still accelerating development of science and technology has not been accompanied by any equal development in social, economic, and political patterns. We are now only beginning to explore the potentialities which it offers for developments in our culture outside technology, particularly in the social, political, and economic fields. It is safe to predict that such social inventions as modern-type capitalism, fascism, and communism will be regarded as primitive experiments directed toward the adjustment of modern society to modern technology. Dr. Ralph Linton. The Zeitgeist Movement has lots of people contributing all kinds of talents. This is something that was developed a couple of Z-days ago, I believe, by some of our graphically talented artists within the Zeitgeist Movement. And it's talking about scientific democracy, which is a concept that I think a lot of people don't understand very well, so I'm going to talk about it a little bit today. If your views are scientifically valid, then they're acceptable. Use science to arrive at decisions. Don't use politics to make them. We rely on politicians all the time to make decisions about where to put highways, how to build bridges, how to construct all types of infrastructure devices for our country. They're not in any way qualified to do that. The engineers are the ones that know how to build those structures and know how to put them in the right places in order to provide what's needed in terms of service to the population. We should be doing all of our decisions in society and the basis of society based on this scientific type democracy. One of the core tenets of the Zeitgeist movement is this scientific worldview. The scientific worldview is almost every major systemic error which has deluded men for thousands of years relied on practical experience. Horoscopes, incantations, oracles, magic, witchcraft, the cures of witch doctors and of medical practitioners before the advent of modern medicine were all firmly established through the centuries in the eyes of the public by their supposed practical successes. The scientific method was devised precisely for the purpose of elucidating the nature of things under more carefully controlled conditions and by more rigorous criteria than are present in the situations created by practical problems. Michael Polanyi. I may not be pronouncing these names correctly, but there are quite a few quotations and footnotes and references throughout this book. So any information that you find there is firmly referenced, and you can go back and look the sources up for yourself if you choose to do so. One of the things that we have right now in our modern society is that we have a huge set of beliefs, a system of beliefs that is largely what I would call modern superstition. And that's what we're going to be talking about to a certain degree today. These superstitions that are talked about, horoscopes, incantations, oracles, magic, witchcraft, those are things that are now considered superstitions by most people. They weren't at the time they existed. Now we have a whole different set of superstitions, beliefs in things like democracy, for instance, and nationalism. These are modern superstitions that we have that are propagating beliefs that are no longer serving the needs of the population as a whole of humanity. A scientific worldview means being willing and able to adapt both as an individual and as a civilization when new understandings and approaches emerge that can better solve problems and further prosperity. This worldview likely marks the greatest shift in human comprehension in history. Every modern convenience we take for granted is a result of this method, whether recognized or not, as the inherent, self-generating, mechanistic logic appears to be universally applicable to all known phenomena. I've footnoted these references. They're mostly from this book, The Zeitgeist Movement Defined. In the end, there is no single solution, only the near-empirical natural law reasoning that arrives at solutions and purpose. This is one of the things that I've been trying to share with you all today, is that the solutions are technical and they're specific. But the natural law reasoning that's the core of the Zeitgeist movement is the critical train of thought that needs to be shared and understood. From the moment we are born, the world is a causal framework in which we begin the process of observation, experimentation, and evaluation, determining the chains of causality that allow us to recognize patterns and utilize those patterns for our benefit. The fact is, there is technically only one race, the human race. There is only one basic habitat, Earth, and there is only one working manner of operational thought, scientific. What the Zeitgeist movement is striving to do here is to define the underlying basis of commonality that we share across the planet, regardless of our nationality, our race, our religion. We have certain characteristics and qualities that we all have in common. This process of thinking, this way of thinking about things, is one of those processes. The scientific method in the group mind. The scientific method embodies some key insights. There are many chains of causality that result in various observable phenomena. The chains of causality leading to any particular culmination are immutable from the moment of observation. Understanding of chains of causality allow us to predict the culmination depending upon the accuracy and completeness of our understandings. Any observational deviations from the expected culminations are due to incomplete understanding of the chains of causality. By applying more accurate understandings, chains of causality can be influenced in the present moment, leading to predictable outcomes. Thus, we have arrived at all the technological advances of modern civilization. The Zeitgeist movement proposes extending the application of the scientific method to all observable culminations of modern civilization, with the goal of arriving at more accurate understandings of the many complex chains of causality that have led to culminations like unemployment, poverty, war, crime, disease, inequality, pollution, and climate change, to name a few. The application of a scientific perspective to our emerging global civilization can reasonably be expected to lead to deeper and more complete understandings of the many complex chains of causality that are generating so many of the seemingly intractable problems we face. Those understandings, in turn, can be expected to bring insights into true problem resolution. This is the manner in which the scientific method arrives at all technological progress. Why not apply this approach to our modern socioeconomic system itself? Because human beings are intimately connected to and derived from the natural world, let us apply a scientific worldview to human beings. Every person is an observable culmination of long and complex chains of causality. The resulting mind of each individual embodies their particular value set that results in predictable patterns of behavior in response to any given environmental influences. Because humans have the ability to communicate with other humans, many understandings are passed from generation to generation. The observable culmination we call humanity can be seen as a group mind, comprised of the contributions of many individual minds throughout time, each individual mind itself being the culmination of a long, complex chain of causality, at least partially derived from the group mind itself. I started this little talk with a reference to the zombies. I must confess that I'm one of those. I'm a zombie like most people. I'm damaged. I've been damaged by this culture and this society. My values are deeply conditioned and altered by the culture and the environment that I live in. And I've struggled greatly to try and change that. But this is what we all struggle with. We're all flawed and damaged individuals at this point in time because of the nature of the culture that we exist within. It's almost impossible for us to imagine what it's like to live in a truly civilized society in which we try to maintain a healthy environment for all people and we support one another. It's almost impossible for us to begin to think about the process of what it would be like to live there. And especially even harder to figure out how to get from here to there. That's what the Zeitgeist Movement is about, and that's why we're here today, is to discuss how we begin this process. Some interesting insights can be gathered from this core understanding. A vast inheritance of knowledge and understanding comes to us through the group mind. According to the Population Reference Bureau, it is estimated that for every human alive today, there are 15 who are now dead. Much of the civilization that exists around us today exists only because of the contributions to the group mind of all our ancestors. Ideas and understandings that were not shared have died with their originators, while those that have been shared have grown and been refined until we are able to garner the scientific insights and innovations that mark our modern civilization. When viewed from this perspective, owning patents is a rather peculiar notion. How can one person own anything as insubstantial as an idea, especially when it is so deeply dependent on the ideas of the many minds that have preceded it in death? If you own the idea and you keep it to yourself, it is as though it doesn't exist at all from the perspective of the group mind. While by sharing insights openly, the group mind contributes a vast wealth of understanding and further insight towards the solution, towards the evolution of understandings that benefit all. What are the implied understandings we can derive from an application of the scientific worldview to human beings, to the group mind, and to modern society and civilization? We often hear the phrase, "become the change you wish to see in the world." TZM promotes the scientific worldview as the best approach for realizing solutions to the huge problems facing us. To embody the scientific worldview implies certain very definite understandings that lead to certain value and behavioral shifts for individuals and by implication for humanity and the group mind as a whole. We cannot change the chain of causality that has generated any particular observable event, no matter how unpleasant, difficult, or troubling it may be. We can, however, gain understanding and insight into the chain of causality that led to the event by taking a scientific observational approach. Understanding and insight allow us to take actions in the present to alter the course of chains of causality, hopefully leading to better future culminations. This understanding from a scientific perspective makes it very clear what we can and cannot accomplish as individuals. Can we influence the group mind? Absolutely, but not by wishful thinking. Only by careful, unbiased observation leading to insight and understanding and subsequent appropriate changes in our own behavior can we influence the group mind. Without a doubt, we can change the world by changing ourselves. Our relationship to everyone and everything changes when we change ourselves. It is, in fact, the one and only thing we can do. Knowledge is gathered by observation of nature, including our own nature. By application of the scientific perspective to knowledge, we accumulate understanding. Understanding changes our behavior. Changing our behavior changes the interaction we have with ourselves, others, and the natural world. And so we change the world. Each of us gathers knowledge constantly. This is what we do by being alive. Understanding derived from knowledge comes through recognizing chains of causality. Through the group mind, we share understandings. Those understandings are constantly subject to revision based on continuing observations. Thus, our individual understandings and the understandings derived from the group mind are always emergent. When we newly recognize chains of causality, we sometimes call this awakening. Recognizing the awakening to new understandings is a constantly emerging process, allows us to release outdated understandings for new, more accurate understandings. When we begin to recognize the process itself, understanding begins to accelerate. As understanding accelerates, the changes in our behavior accelerate. The faster we change, the more quickly and effectively we change the world. So for those of you who talk about us running out of time, that we need to make changes very quickly, this is the process. This is how we do it. And we do this as individuals, and we do this as a group. Perhaps the key insight of the Zeitgeist movement is this understanding that by embodying the scientific worldview, it becomes possible to change ourselves and the world to be more in harmony with nature, including our own nature. It is in this way, through the educational outreach of the Zeitgeist movement, that we seek to promote a global value shift within the group mind of humanity in order to solve the problems we face and to create a sustainable future of access abundance for all by facilitating the natural emergence of a natural law resource-based economy. We cannot change nature to meet our needs, but by changing ourselves to adapt to our emergent understandings of the ways of nature, our needs can be met in a sustainable fashion. A sustainable manner. I love this picture. This is a picture by Mark Henson, who was gracious enough to allow us to use this. I came across this a couple of ZDays ago and used it online at that time. And somebody who was, I think it might have been his wife, saw my using it through the Zeitgeist movement and said, and contacted me and said, hey, you're using this, but you're not. I came across it on the web. I didn't know where it came from at the time. Said, you're using my husband's painting, but you don't give him any attribution to it at all. And I said, well, I didn't know who made it. I just found it on the web. And she said, well, this is like his stuff. I mean, I said, well, I'll be glad to put the attribution. I didn't know where it came from. And he said, well, I need to talk to Mark about it and see how he feels about it. Well, Mark took a look at it. He took a look at what we were in the Zeitgeist movement and decided that this was a great idea. And he said, go ahead, feel free to use this as long as you put my name on it. The Zeitgeist movement is more than happy to use this for their purposes. So that's how this is why this is here today. But this is a wonderful picture, and I'm using this to show the dichotomy between the present monetary market system in which we all exist at the moment and the possibility of a natural resource-based economy. And I'm going to start talking about that a little bit so you'll understand the differences now. Economy. The word economy can be traced back to the Greek word oikonomos, one who manages a household, derived from okos, house, and nemen, to manage. It's the first definition of it is a careful management of resources to avoid unnecessary expenditure or waste. Economy. Now, I'm going to try and delineate for you as clearly as I can, and this is a large section of the book that we're talking about here, the differences between a monetary market system and a natural law resource-based economic system. A monetary market system is based on market efficiency. The purpose of the market efficiency, of course, is to deliver goods to the public in order to make as much profit as possible. And everything is driven in that direction. Technical efficiency means basing our decisions about the products and services that we offer based on their meeting of needs and on the efficiency in which they do that, the manner in which they're able to do that, the sustainable manner in which they're able to provide those resources or services. The synergistic aspect of industries doing ever more work with ever less investment of time and energy per each unit of performance has never been formally accounted as a capital gain of land-situated society. The synergistic effectiveness of world-around integrated industrial process is inherently vastly greater than the confined synergistic effects of a sovereignly operating separate systems. Ergo, only complete world desovereignization can permit the realization of an all-humanity high standard of support. R. Buckminster Fuller. You might have noticed that I'm wearing one of their shirts. Buckminster Fuller is responsible for coining the term spaceship Earth, among other things. If you understood that clearly, what he's saying essentially is that the idea of nations is passé. It no longer serves our needs. National boundaries and borders are obsolete at this point in time. As a matter of fact, blocking our ability to provide a high quality standard of living for all humanity. Market efficiency works only to be efficient with respect to itself, using man-made rule sets related mostly to classical economic dynamics that facilitate profit and growth, while technical efficiency referencing the known laws of nature, seeks the most optimized manner of industrial unfolding possible to preserve the habitat, reduce waste, and ultimately ensure public health based on emerging scientific understandings. So that's essentially market efficiency versus technical efficiency, and we can talk about that later if you have questions about it. Another dichotomy between the two types of systems is that the monetary market system is based on one of constant growth. So we're essentially involved in a monetary system that requires infinite growth in order to sustain itself on a planet with finite resources, a literal impossibility. On the other hand, a natural law resource-based economy is based on a steady state balance with the environment. That's the idea behind a natural law resource-based economy, is that we only use what we can use sustainably. Constant growth versus steady state. If we hypothetically reduce our global society to a single small island with a respectively small population with very limited technology as compared to today, finding that only X number of food survival items were possible in the natural regeneration of the land, would it be a good idea to employ an economic system that sought to increase the use and turnover of the island's resources as fast as possible for the sake of growth? Naturally, the ethic of strategic use and preservation would develop as an ethos in such a condition. The idea would be to reduce waste, not accelerate it, which, again, is what the true definition of economy means, to economize. Another aspect of a monetary market system, which we discussed a little bit earlier, is the competitive and planned obsolescence, as opposed to optimized design efficiency of a natural law resource-based economy. These are the efficiency amplifiers of a natural law resource-based economy. In other words, these are the things that will, if we were to implement them, would increase the natural efficiency of our capacities, our technical capacities for production and services management to provide everybody with what they need on the planet. The pressure for employment for income or earned living is removed. Production targeting social classes is removed. Inefficiency inherent in the competitive practice is removed. In other words, proprietary incompatibility of related goods, components, the lack of standardization. Wasteful multiplicity of goods by competing businesses of the same genre. Change the color, sell it with a new color next month. It's how you continue the growth of the market economy. Incentivized goods weakness to encourage turnover, planned obsolescence. Or inherent goods weakness due to seeking cost efficiency, intrinsic obsolescence. These are some of the ideas that we talk about when we start talking about the transition to a monetary market or to a natural law resource-based system as compared to the monetary market system. Property relationships that create use isolation are removed in favor of shared access. What that refers to is the idea of using, say, a transportation system within a city environment in which most of the people's cars sit at the curb today because everybody owns their own car, blocking up the streets and blocking the curbs and parking areas. Most of the time they're not using those cars, they're just sitting there. We could use a fraction of that amount of cars, maybe 1/10 of that amount of cars, and move all those people just as well to where they need to go with just that type of transportation. And there are all kinds of options that are even much more efficient than that if we were to create efficient mass transit systems in the city so that we wouldn't need individual transportation systems at all. Those would be much better and would allow access to many more people. So this is some of the ideas related to property as opposed to shared access. Design-based recycling is mandated and incentivized, maximizing resource reuse. Again, this is what we try to do within a natural law resource-based economy. Material use per a given production output is strategically calculated to assure using the most conducive and abundant materials known. Design conduciveness for labor automation. At every option, we choose to do this with machines and technology, if it's at all possible, in a sustainable fashion, rather than making somebody go to work and do it. There's no reason to put people to work if they don't have to, except if they need to make money. And of course, in a natural law resource-based economy, there's no money. Serviceable problems resulting from the prior inefficient economic process are reduced, if not eliminated. In other words, we try to make things that will last rather than things that need to be replaced or serviced every so often. I mean, these ideas are kind of obvious. I mean, it's very common sense ideas when you start thinking about it. It's just that within the current monetary market system, we can't apply these things. The only way we're going to ever be able to apply these ideas is by changing the entire system the way that it exists. Invigorating the group mind means human connection, and the sharing of ideas will bring ever-accelerating progress. I've been talking a little bit about the group mind today, and what a tremendous difference that this could make for us, and how the solutions to the problems that we're facing will probably only emerge from the group mind, because they're global problems and they're beyond the power of any individual group or individuals or nations to solve on their own. We need the process of a global community to solve these problems. Okay, so now we're down to property and access. We talked a little bit about that already. From the standpoint of technical efficiency, at the deep expense of market efficiency, a shared access rather than a universal property-oriented society would be exceptionally more sustainable and beneficial. Of course, such a practice would naturally challenge some deep value identifications common to the property culture today. Competition versus collaboration. The competitive system seeks secrecy when it comes to business ideas, often universally against the open flow of knowledge. The use of patents and proprietary rights or trade secrets perpetuates not an advance of innovation, as many proponents of the competitive market assume, but retardation. It is very interesting to think about what knowledge means, how it is generated, and how odd it is for anyone to rationally claim ownership of an idea or invention. At no time in human history has any singular individual culminated an idea that was not serially generated by many before them. The historical culmination of knowledge is a social process, and therefore any claim of ownership of an idea by a person or corporation is intrinsically faulty. The common semi-economic term used today is usufruct, which means the legal right of using and enjoying the fruits or profits of something belonging to another. In reality, however, all attributes of every idea in existence today, in the past, and forever in the future has without exception a distinctly social, not a personal point of origin. They emerged from the group mind. Labor for income versus automation. A dominant cultural value today is that of earning a living, and the application of mechanization in the sense of market efficiency is actually a double-edged sword. While cost efficiency is inherent to mechanization, and hence the general improvement of profit by reducing costs for the business owners, the displacement of human workers, known today as technological unemployment, actually works against market efficiency to the extent that those unemployed workers are now unable to contribute to the needed cyclical consumption that powers the economy, since they have lost their purchasing power as consumers. This contradiction within the capitalist model is unique. From the standpoint of market efficiency, mechanization hence poses both a positive and a negative outcome in this sense. And when we realize that the rate of technological change will, in all probability, displace people increasingly faster than new sectors of employment can be created, mechanization as an inhibiting factor to capitalism becomes ever more apparent. It is, in total, decreasing market efficiency in this circumstance. However, on the other hand, from the standpoint of technical efficiency, once again we see vast improvement and immense possibilities on many levels. The production capacity enabled by this application clearly shows a powerful increase in efficiency regarding not only the effect of industrial production, but also a general increased efficiency of the goods themselves by extension of the accuracy and integrity inherent in production. Also, an implication of this new level of production efficiency is that meeting the needs of the global population has never been more possible. It is easy to see that without the interference of market logic on this new technical capacity, which invariably inhibits its full potential, what could be relatively deemed an abundance of most life-sustaining goods could be facilitated for the global population. Scarcity versus abundance. Supply and demand is a common market relationship which expresses in part how the value of a resource or good is proportional to how much of it is in existence or accessible. From the standpoint of market efficiency, generally, scarcity is a good thing overall, meaning human needs in the form of food, housing, low stress, circumstances for mental health, etc., is utterly external here and has no direct relationship to market efficiency. Meeting human needs in a direct sense would again be inefficient in the market's logic, as it would remove the scarcity pressure that fuels cyclical consumption. Put another way, there is a need for imbalance in order to fuel this demand pressure, and this imbalance can come in many forms. Market efficiency, generally speaking, takes on macro and micro reality. On the macro scale, something that increases sales, growth, or consumption, regardless of the originating pressure for demand, or what is actually being bought and sold and is deemed efficient in this context. On the micro scale, this efficiency takes the form of enabling conditions that can increase profit and reduce input costs, cost efficiency, on the part of the business. This efficiency inherent to capitalism operates without any respect for the social or environmental costs of its process to keep cyclical consumption and profit going, and the world you see around you, full of ecological disorder, human depravity, and general social and environmental instability, has been the result. On the other hand, technical efficiency, which one can characterize as in fact a hindrance to market efficiency, seeks to maintain the environment, maintain human health, and essentially keep balance in the natural world. The reduction of waste, resolution of problems, and the maintaining of alignment with natural law is the common sense logic embodied. It is unfortunate to realize that today we have two opposed systems of economy working at once, working against each other in fact. The market system, embodying its archaic, traditionalized logic, is utterly out of sync with the natural technical economy as it exists. The result is vast discord and imbalance with ever-mutating problems and consequences for the human species. It is clear which system will win in this battle. Nature will persist with its natural rules regardless of how much we theorize this or that validation of the way we have traditionally organized ourselves on this planet. The history of economic thought is, in many ways, the history of human social relationships, with the pattern of certain mere assumptions gaining prominence to the effect of being considered sacrosanct and immutable over time. This element of traditionalism, culminating from values and belief systems of earlier periods, has been a core theme, the central point being that the attributes taken as given to the dominant theories of economy today are actually not based on direct physical support, such as would be needed to find validation via the method of science, but rather based on the mere perpetuation of an established ideological framework which has evolved to intricately self-refer to its internal logic, justifying its own existence by its own standards. I believe that greed and competition are not a result of a mutable human temperament. I have come to the conclusion that greed and fear of scarcity are in fact being continuously created and amplified as a direct result of the kind of money we are using. The direct consequence is that we have to fight with each other in order to survive. Bernard Lataire. The fact is, beliefs are not equal in their validity. Some are truer than others, and hence some are more dysfunctional than others in the context of real life. The scientific method of arriving at conclusions is the ultimate benchmark upon which the integrity of human values can be measured, and this modern reality demystifies the common relativism defense of subjective human belief. It is not about right and wrong, but what works and doesn't work. The integrity of our values and beliefs is only as good as how we align them with our natural world. This is the common ground that we all share. Okay. Now there's a section in the book that talks about transition, and we've talked about that a little bit here already today. But transition is a big topic within the Zeitgeist movement. It seems like everybody wants to talk about transition when they begin to understand some of these ideas. And to my perspective, the Zeitgeist movement is so far from sharing the understandings that we need in order to begin any true transitional process that the educational aspect of what we're doing is of ultimate importance, and we need to continue to expand this as much as we possibly can, up until the point that enough people understand this that we won't be able to restrain the transitions that will begin to happen, because people will understand how to do things in a sustainable fashion. The move from a scarcity-preserving economy to a system of direct resource management and scientific application in the pursuit of post-scarcity or abundance economy to meet the needs of the human species while securing the integrity of the habitat is really a transition of values. At the same time, it is also a transition of operant reinforcement, which simply means the new structure actually works to reward conservation, balance, social contribution, and ecological respect rather than what we reinforce today, which is essentially selfishness, competition, consumption, and exploitation. In fact, the market system could gesturally be viewed as not a social system per se, but as an anti-social system. As far as physical transition itself, it is naturally naive to assume we can predict the future regarding such a vast societal shift, especially given how forceful and present the pressures are that keep the current system in place. All of us are coerced on a daily basis into this market psychology in order to maintain survival, and hence our values are deeply associated to those values, practices, and general worldview, whether we like it or not. TZM naturally views the shifting of people's values as the most important necessity for transition. How this is done is deeply related, of course, to education, while also attempting to actively create conditions that, again, hopefully reinforce these new sustainable values, inching out larger order change. It is important to acknowledge that in order to really create a more sustainable, humane world, a complete move out of the current social architecture is required. Otherwise, the same basic problems will persist, even if reduced to some degree by half measures. To do this, global social movement tactics become critical to put pressure on the existing system, along with helping change the intents and values of the culture itself by vast education and communication projects. TZM focuses on positive pressure influence in its activism work, showing the world what can be done through education and think tank projects. Yet, TZM does not deny the existence of emerging negative pressures and acknowledges them also as a form of mobilizing incentive. Societal collapse or system failure is a process, and the real question is actually how bad are we prepared for it to become, before we act to change it. The goal of transitional activism is not only facilitate a move to the new model, but to also work to help those suffering in the current model, basically bringing them in first in this process of transition. This is done by creating parallel systems which do not use money but still provide helpful services to people. This is something that Roy was talking about earlier today, very much so. While on the surface of the following proposition may seem like a mere poetic gesture, the truth of the matter is that it is absolutely true and inescapable. We are all in the Zeitgeist movement, whether we like it or not. While our capabilities are truly powerful, particularly when it comes to human society's recent capacity to build technological tools which can change the societal construct rapidly, it is easy to forget that at the root core of this existence is a kind of subservience and acceptance of factors that we will never have control of. After millennia of confusion about the nature of our existence, inventing complex and ultimately false systems of belief, as we cope with this conclusion, the slow discovery of what are commonly termed the laws of nature, have provided not only a means to create and invent, but to also understand that we are actually not in control in many profound ways. We appear to only be in control of how we relate to this existing rule structure, and those natural law rules show no signs of changing. Our submission to this reality rests at the heart of the technical proposals made by the Zeitgeist movement. It is merely a process of adaptation to better optimize human existence and create a condition that improves our lives and allows for future generations to inhabit this planet without severe deficiency and a loss of sustainability. In truth, the human species today does not share the world with itself and the habitat. Does not just share the world with itself and the habitat. It also shares it with the extended family of the species and the extended family of other life inherited in the habitat, generations into the future. A computer, a car, a phone, a table, a pencil, or any other tool we may utilize are not merely detached abstractions we engage in. They are extensions of ourselves in very real and direct ways, improving some type of function we wish to complete. As time moves on, the logic is clear that problem resolution can become ever more powerful, so much so that the social models we may embrace in one generation will be made obsolete in another generation. The desired transition from the competitive market model of economics to a natural law resource-based economy is just such a move.